Started, I just want to let everyone know because today's webinar will be a hands-on experience. The PowerPoint presentation will be emailed to everyone after today's webinar, so you will be please be on the lookout for that, an email from ABG TAP with a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. Throughout this presentation, if you have any questions, please be sure to post them in the chat pod, and either myself or Penny will address your questions throughout the webinar presentation. This webinar is being recorded at this time and will be available on the new California Adult Education website, and I'll post the URL to that website in the chat pod to make sure everyone has it. It'll be located in the Educators Professional Development section of the chat. Immediately following this presentation, you will receive a pop-up window with an evaluation. Please be sure to fill out this evaluation and let us know what you thought about today's presentation and if there are any professional development or technical assistance needs you have. I'm not seeing anyone with any technical difficulties. If I can get one person to let me know that you're able to hear me, that would be great. Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Holly. Now I'll turn it over to Penny, who will get us started.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As Veronica said, this is the second of a two-part series on open educational resources. We're going to spend a little more time today actually looking at creating OER resources, but just a quick review if you hadn't had a chance to, or if you did not attend part one, on the screen we'll have links here to the recording. This is not a live link for you right now because I'm sharing my screen, but when Veronica sends the presentation out to you, you'll also have access to all of the links on the presentation. So with the recording link and with the presentation link, you can get a good overview of what are open educational resources. The last item here is the Creative Commons licenses, or the CC licenses, and that's what that graphic image is all about. It's regarding these items here in terms of different types of licenses, and these are simply expanded copyright licenses, so to speak. So what it does in a nutshell is it allows the creator to determine how their works can be used. So each one of these little icons means something. In particular, this CC0 excuse me, means public domain. The author has released all copyrights and says you can use it any way you like. The little person, human image here is meaning attribution, give credit to the author. These other icons here, this little circle with the arrow, means to share alike. And the one below that, the equal sign in the circle, means no derivative works. You have to use it exactly as the author created it. The circle with the dollar sign and the slash means no commercial use. It cannot be sold without permission of the author. This one down here is also non-commercial, but also share alike. So educators like this one a lot because it's a way to ensure that they get credit and their materials are shared, but they're not being sold. And the very bottom one here is, again, non-commercial and no derivatives. So they're still being shared, but again, same thing. They can't be sold and they are equivalent works. So I'm not sure if those in the room went out and actually created their accounts. We're going to use two resources today, OER Commons and then CK12. And the reason why we're doing that is try to give you a live look at how does this actually work. With open educational resources, to be truly open, they must have what are called the 5 R's, which is to retain, meaning that you own it. It's your work. You can control copies of it, how you download it and send it off, store it and manage it. The right to reuse it, use that content in a wide variety of ways. So it can be used in a class, say in a study group, on a website, in a video. And the right to revise it, to adapt it, to adjust it, modify it, or alter it in some way. And that includes things as simple as translating the content into another language, maybe change the colors in a photograph, again, revising it. Editing works maybe to change the language levels so they're a little more understandable, say, for English language learners or low literacy learners. Also, part of being an open educational resources is the right to remix it, to combine it with the original or other revised content, basically to create other material, something new. And the last one is to the redistribution, the right to share the copies of that original content, and then whatever the remixes are, etc. So these 5 R's, so that whole concept of retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute are central to an open educational. Now, the reason why that becomes important is that as we go into building open educational resources and trying to adhere to those 5 R's, we need to be able to use tools that allow for those 5 R's. Not all of them do that. For example, if you had a simulation game of some kind, unless you were some kind of programmer, you may have a difficult time revising it, unless the person who created it created tools that would allow you to edit the main functions of that simulation or game. So there's some controversy here over, you can create with anything, right? Many of us probably use a program like Microsoft Office. Well, that's fine, except that particular item cannot be edited, say, by somebody in Africa unless they have Microsoft Office, because that is a commercial product. Somebody has to pay for it. So there's another tool called OpenOffice. It's a free open source piece of software that it does read Microsoft Office documents. So it kind of makes it a little easier if you find materials that are created in a format such as Microsoft Word. OpenOffice allows you to open it and then you can save it into a more editable content or context, or what is one of the word I want here? I can't think of the right name, but you want it to be editable. And again, let's try to get to that open part where it can be changed and revised by others. The other side of this is using online tools that allow for editing. Probably the most popular right now is Google Drive, because it's a free account and you have lots of tools available that are very similar to what you have in Microsoft Office. You have a slide program, you have a word processing program, you have a spreadsheet program, you have a drawing program, etc. So that is very popular to use because I can share it and I can allow it to be editable or not. The other one that's very popular and becoming more so in many ways is Office 365. However, that product in and of itself isn't necessarily open, but it does allow for sharing. And they do have some nice tools in there that, this Office mix that I have noted here is a way for you to incorporate some cool things into PowerPoint. We're kind of splitting hairs in a bit because the controversy is over the ability to edit resources. And so what I'm going to try to do here is to allow you to use tools that it doesn't matter. You're going to use a tool that then anyone can go in and edit your work because all of the tools are available online. The two of them we're going to use today is one from OER Commons, and it's a tool called OpenAuthor. And the second one we'll take a look at is CK12 and their Flexbooks. And those are textbooks that are editable by you. You can take away or add to those textbooks and then be able to publish them, print them, or download them in an electronic format usable for you and your learners. The Amazon Inspire is a new one. They've been in beta now, I believe, for about a year. Haven't explored it too terribly much, but given kind of the big gorilla in the room in terms of what Amazon has been doing, it might be worth looking at and seeing if it would be something for you to use for your purposes, especially if you already have an Amazon account. So before I go any farther, do I have any other questions? Do I have any questions so far? Just remember, authoring tools, you can start with Microsoft Word. That's not a problem, because then you can license it. But moving forward, you may want to think about things that you want to share with others, and one of these tools, OpenAuthor or CK12, may be a good way to go. I noticed Veronica has in the chat pod about creating accounts. Please be aware that when you create an account, you must be able to check your email and authenticate your email before your account will allow you to log in. So if you're doing that now, just do it quick. I know it takes a couple of minutes to actually get through that process. So we're going to explore OpenAuthor and CK12, and that's why I wanted you to create those accounts. But I have resources at the end of the slide deck that will just give you many, many more of these authoring tools. And if you're a person that likes to go out and create and explore things, you may find something that you like better than either of these two tools. So before I go any farther, can I get kind of a shout out in the chat pod if you have accounts? Just say yes or no in the chat pod. Because if you don't, it's no big deal. Okay. Is it Nualia? Is that how you pronounce that? Joyce? Christy? Not yet. Okay. It usually doesn't take too terribly long, but it's that authentication process that sometimes gets a little tricky. Okay, Deborah, sometimes and when you say trouble creating accounts, they're going to check for a few things, including valid email address, etc. So be sure to use one that you check and you have access to. Okay, so those of you that don't have an account yet, please don't fret. As Veronica will send out this slide deck, and you'll also have access to the recording. So I'm going to go ahead and move over to OER Commons so we can get started. Now, when you create your account and you get logged in, you're going to see your profile image, assuming you uploaded one, in the upper right-hand corner. So that shows that I'm logged in. And then we're going to go under this Create button, and we have 3 different types of resources here. The Resource Builder, which is basically, think of it as like little modules. It might be tied to a single lesson. And of course, they also have a Lesson Builder. So Lesson Builder can have multiple modules, and the module builder here is basically used for community colleges, and colleges use it a lot for building big parts of online courses. We're basically going to work with the resource builder today. So we're going to look at the tools. I'm going to switch over to the live site, but you need to understand how OpenAuthor works. It is basically these 3 parts, which is to write. This is writing your content. So you need to have some planning in place, have an outline, have some of the resources you want to use, consider the standards you want to align to, because OER Commons and OpenAuthor allow you to do that. A description section, this basically says this describes your work and how you align it to educational levels and those standards that I mentioned earlier. And then submission. This is where you choose the license. How do you want others to use this work? And then you publish it to the OER Commons site, which then it becomes searchable by that site. And I can tell you this, that adult educators have been very active on OER Commons, and it is a way for you to share and find other resources from them. So let me flip over to OER Commons here, and I'm going to go to the home site. So this is that screen that I showed you before. So what I would like you to do is go ahead and log in to that site, and from that green button you'll see those same 3 options here: Resource Builder, Lesson Builder, and Module Builder. I want you to choose Resource Builder, and you're going to open to a blank screen. Now, I'm going to open up a resource that I've already started, just so you can see that there's a little content there. And how I do that is I go to my profile where it says My Items. Okay, so which kind of makes sense, right? These are things that you're creating. So I'm going to go ahead and click on My Items. And Deborah, when you get a chance, come back and tell me how you're doing with getting your accounts. I haven't heard from you since I mentioned that before about using an accurate email. So let me know. So now here I'm in My Items. You are going to be on a screen that looks similar to this. You're going to see up in the upper left-hand corner where it says Edit, and probably Title right now, because I've already got mine titled. And I haven't finished this. So this is my works that's called Alaska Myths and Legends, okay? And I haven't finished it. It's not done. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit. And this is probably more what your screen looks like. So as I go through this page, I'm just going to show you the different items here. First and foremost, of course, is the title. Okay, and then far to the right is those 3 basic steps that you're going to take in using Author. Okay, Deborah, thank you for letting me know. First is the writing part. And please don't think it's just about written word. This is where you're going to be able to add images. You're going to be able to add video. You're going to be able to put in tables. There's lots that you can do here. And then the second step here is to describe, as I said before, what kind of resource is it, how does it align to standards, and then the last is that you submit it. So you'll notice on this page that I have a toolbar. Each one of these has a little pop-up tooltip, so they're fairly typical. Bulleted lists, numbered lists, how do you want to indent your work, decrease it, putting in a table, aligning the text, choosing different text styles. And I strongly encourage you to use text styles, especially in terms of headers, subheaders, and paragraphs, because that's going to help your work be more accessible to someone who might be using some kind of screen reader, because the screen reader uses these headers to, or styles, I should say, to be able to navigate within your materials that you provide. Of course, you have your typical bold, italic, underline, changing the color text, providing a link to something, attaching or inserting some kind of media, putting a reference note, which can be very nice for helping learners, follow and authenticate the work that you're doing. And then if you're math, you may be familiar with the LA text symbols. This allows you to do some nice math quotations, look very nice online. And then, of course, the inevitable, wonderful help button. And they're nice because they put it both at the top and at the bottom down here. On the left-hand side, you have your table of contents. This is where you're going to add your units, and you can add different headings. So in my case, if I'm building this, this is where an outline is very helpful. Deborah, thank you. I'm glad you're in, and I'm hoping you caught up. Remember, we're going to go up to that top Create button and choose Resource, and you should be on a screen something like this. So here, if I wanted to add a new unit, I'm going to go ahead and click over here, and I'm going to have this as a unit, and I'm going to add a heading that might be Southeast Alaska. And maybe I could add a subheading of the elusive Kushtaka. I always get that one wrong. Okay, so I'm adding these different parts and pieces, and of course under each one I would be adding my important text. Now these up here at the top, I referenced a particular website, and I had this unit 1 that I didn't title. So maybe I want to name this something else. Maybe this is introductory, or I want to add a new unit here. And instead of calling it Unit 2, I go, no, this is my introduction. Oops, it's in the wrong spot. Now what do I do? Fortunately, I can just grab this. I have these little, I call it a north, south, east, west arrow that pops up next to my misplaced introduction here. Hopefully you can see it on the screen. It might be tiny, but I can simply just grab that and move it into the position that I want. And maybe this Unit 1 now, I could just call it, something that's more broad, just Alaska folklore. So you can see just real quickly here how my structure is building for my table of contents. So I'm going to pause here for a second and see if everybody's been able to put in a title and at least add a couple of units on the left-hand side. I'm just going to wait. I know we're just whizzing right through this, but hopefully you'll be able to keep up. And if not, it's fine. Just sit back, relax, and watch. So anybody you might have to switch on your screen. If you're on a Mac, you've got to go to your dock and switch back over to Adobe Connect. If you're on a PC, you got to go down to your taskbar, find that funny little green button with the 4 arrows in it, and bring up Adobe Connect again so you can see what I'm doing. If you're lucky enough to have 2 screens, you'll have Adobe Connect up on one side and maybe working in OER Commons on the other. So how are we doing? I'm not seeing anything in the chat pod, so hopefully I haven't lost you all, or you're just busy. So another thing that you may have noticed while you're here is if you have, busy, Joyce says busy, okay, good. What this allows you to do here as well is you can add co-authors, because if you like, you might have some other teachers that you're working with, and it allows you to bring in people that you know, or you can just type in names, and hopefully you're working with somebody that also has an account, because this way you can share this resource and you're both credited for doing the work. Also, if you use Google Docs, you have a button here that import from Google Docs. And sometimes it takes, oh, my pop-ups are blocked here. Let me see if I can unblock that. So it gives you a pop-up and it wants to know which account are you going to import from, and you want to give it the permissions that are necessary. And then I can go through and start looking for all of my different documents that I might want to add to this particular resource that I'm building. I unfortunately don't have anything about the Alaska Acoustica on this drive, but you can get the idea here. How many of you use oh, thank you, Nuala. How many of you use Google Docs, Google Drive? Yeah, so this may be really probably one of the biggest improvements that OER Commons and the Open Author tool made in the last year or so, because it's a really nice way if you plan it well. Just remember, whatever you're using for your Google Docs that you're attaching into this resource, it can go out and refresh that material to make sure that it remains accurate. So you want to make sure that those folders that you're using are, you're going to leave them where they are. So from here, I would be adding, if I wanted to, I could go out and find images and import them. So let's say I wanted to have some kind of image up here. I need to go and find it, because if I click on this little Insert Media button, I have to go out and grab the image. Now, I want you to be aware of this little statement up here. I have permission to upload this item. This means, I'm going to see if I can get this pop-up to come up, that you're really being diligent about finding information, finding images that are licensed properly, meaning you can do this upload. You're finding Creative Commons images or public domain images that you can bring into this resource. Because remember, we're working in an open educational resource authoring tool, and it wants to ensure that what you're doing is actually, all of the materials are actually available to share in the license that you choose. Okay? So I have to go out and find images before I do this. So I happen to bring this up, Alaska Myths before, and I'm looking here. I am under Google Images, and I don't know how these things are licensed. So I'm going to go to my settings option here, and under Advanced Search, I'm going to change my usage rights to free to use or share, even commercially, because that's the most open license there is. So if I find Advanced Search, I find a bunch of images here, and of course I would do the typical thing that we do in terms of how we download. Here's a nice one maybe. So if I go to this Wikipedia site, well, it's not really here. This one might be better. So I'm going to go and look at this image. And I want to make sure that it's licensed correctly, so I'm going to go and visit the site where it is. It may not be licensed correctly, because sometimes this stuff takes forever to find out if they're licensed. So I have to go and look down the list here. Sorry for the scrolling, but I'm trying to find that image that I saw that was appropriate. Oh, and we're getting close. So if I look at this image, and under More Details, I can see that I can download it. And as I scroll down the page, Wikipedia Commons. This media file is in the public domain in the United States. Oh, goody. that means I can take it. I can download it. So I'm going to click on download, and I'm going to choose the size here. I'll do this size. And hopefully it's downloading like I want. I don't see it pop up, so I'm going to do the copy image thing. And I'm only doing that copy image thing because I know this image is in the public domain. Now, I'm going to go check to see if it actually downloaded. So I'm going to switch back over to OER Commons. I'm going to go to Insert Media. And where would you go to find your file? Nualia, sometimes it is, you do get more information on those on a right click because it's just a shortcut. And see, I don't see my images here. So let me go to Images, Pictures. I don't see it here. So I wonder where my picture went. Let me go look again and see what I did wrong. Because I would prefer to download it. I choose my size, but it just kind of, I'll grab the image address and I will paste it in my, what's in the image. So a Eskimo, family, I think they were Inuit, but I will leave it at that. If you want to make sure that all of your works are accessible, OER Commons does provide you with area descriptions. So these are used by the screen readers. In this case, it might be, a mother and a father and a child sitting together in a formal portrait. They are wearing traditional parkas with fur trim around the hood. Something like that. Something that helps the person who's listening to a description understand what they are missing in terms of they can't visually see this picture, so we're describing it in a verbal form and a written form so the screen readers can describe it for you. Now, I'm not going to do it this time just for reasons of time, but I want you to understand that's very important to ensure that your documents are fully accessible. So when I submit this, let's see where my image ended up. And wow, even though I picked that big one, right? So it's a little too big, so I'm going to grab the corner here and resize it. And I don't like where it is, so again, I'm going to grab that 4 corners and I'm going to drag it up. See if I can get it to a position that I prefer. Come on. And I missed. Oh, a little closer. And maybe one more here. See if I can get it up above. So now I've got my picture, I have my caption, and I don't know if I can change the layout here if I want, in terms of I want my text to wrap around it, I want it to be in line, or I want the text to wrap around the other side. So you do have some options within the editor. And for each section that I wish to change, I would then just simply, click on that link on the left or add my headings. I can go back to my introduction, which I have nothing in my introduction right now. And so if I wanted to write something here, I would just click at the end of my title and I would write a nice introduction. So you would do this for all of your bits and pieces. Yes, Nuala, you're right. Recommended keeping the descriptions really short. And yes, if it is not pertinent to what you are teaching, then you can say decorative, as you mentioned in your chat message, because it then allows the person using the screen reader to jump over it. They don't have to listen to something that has no relevance for what is being taught. So this is all part of planning a document. So you're absolutely right. If it has no relevance to what you're teaching, then number one, why have the image other than it's eye candy for people who can see? But secondarily, if it is important to your teaching, then you do want to have those good descriptions. So are we okay so far? I'm going to wait for the chat. I know you're kind of popping back and forth. So if I wanted to go get a video or something like that. And I'm going to put it down in my next section here under Alaska Folklore. I can do that by placing my cursor where I want it. And again, it's this media bit, this little paper clip that says insert media. And if I wanted to go under Alaska Myths again, the search, I might be able to go in and look under videos and find something that might be of interest. Oh, here's one, In Search of the Kushtaka. So if I looked at this, so this is Alaska's Bigfoot, so to speak, I'm going to go ahead and take the URL under the share option here, and I'm going to copy it. And when I come back to my my OER builder here under my OER author, I'm going to click that little link, and I can copy and paste that URL into my box, and again click next. And now it says, okay, here's the title. It tells me it may take a little time to display, and then I'm going to click preview to make sure that it shows up. So I'm going to go ahead and click submit, and I'm going, okay, well, here's a link, but I'm not going to worry about playing it yet, right? Again, I have some buttons where I can change the alignment, and I can add a video description. And honestly, I might even put in a link to the transcript that's in the YouTube video here. So if I look under these 3 buttons on the right above the subscribe button, and it doesn't look like they added any transcripts, so I might even contact the authors and say, hey, can you provide a transcript here so folks can see what's going on or hear what's going on? So I haven't done I don't have a complete full outline like a teacher would go through and have information on exactly what they wanted their textbook or their resource to say. And Nualia, you're asking about what about usage rights on videos. When you are linking to the video, you're fine because you are not taking that object. Now, if you were to download videos, that's a different story. That requires you to have permissions, or it has to be licensed under Creative Commons. For example, if you like TED Talk videos, wonderful videos, you have the rights to download it, but they're very clear that you cannot edit them, so you can't make any changes, you can't sell it, but you can redistribute it. So you could put it into a resource like this, and you would be perfectly fine. But again, always look at the license for whatever items that you're using. If the owner takes down the video, then the link that you put into this resource is broken, which is a risk that we all take, which is why, again, in your planning, maybe you want to look for those videos that are very clean and licensed as Creative Commons, and you can download them so they're never taken down by a site. Okay, does that make sense? I think we're doing good. So this is a very, very brief overview of just the first section here about writing. We certainly didn't complete it, but let me go through the last 2 steps, which is the next item is to describe. And I can click the Describe tab up here at the top of the screen, or I can click the green button at the bottom that says Next Step, Describe. And this is exactly what I would do. So I would write this abstract here, and I would choose what are my general subjects, what are the primary users. So, you can pick from the list. Maybe I would choose history in this case. And who are the primary users? Students, teachers, administrators, parents, others. So I could say student. What other options? What grade level? Now you'll notice that they don't have adult education here. They do allow tagging in other ways for adult education, and they do have a grade level of adult education on their resource side, not the writing side here, but on the resource side. So, if I put in, I don't know if it'll let me keep it or not. See, it didn't let me keep it. So I would have to make a choice, like maybe 8th grade, just for the heck of it. And the language I would choose is English. The material type, What is it? Is it reading materials? Is it a full course? Is it, instructor materials? You can see the options here that you can look for. So maybe I'll just make it a homework assignment in this case. And again, I can add more than that. I can align it to the standards. So I can choose Common Core standards in math, English language arts, next generation science. And then if I scroll down, I got North Dakota's art and literacy. So most of us would use Common Core. They are working on college and career readiness standards. They're working on it. They're just not there yet. So if I were to choose one of these, I could say maybe language arts for grades 6 through 8. And if the learning domain, reading and literacy and history and social studies, I can do some alignment tags. I mean, there's a bunch in here that I can choose from those Common Core state standards. So you can see how you can get through and find a lot of ways to describe your material. Now, I'm not doing a super job of it here, but you get the idea of what this looks like. Then the last step is to actually license your materials. Do you allow for modifications? Yes, somebody could add something really good. Do I allow commercial uses? Now, everybody gets all upset about this, so they could include their work in something else, like a textbook or a photo book or something. And I'm one of those, and I'm part like that sharing economy, and I'm like, if my stuff is that good and they want to use it, then I would like them to contact me. And if you don't like this option, I can go over here and say, allow for modifications, yes, if they share alike, and say, no, you can't use it for commercial work. And I would always stick to this jurisdiction of international, because but what it does is it keeps you up to date on the most commonly used copyright licenses that generally align with other countries as well. So it's a way to make sure that if someone in Europe was going to take your work, that they understand how it can be used. And then the last step, which I'm not going to do today because this is not a finished work, is to click the Publish button. And when that Publish button is selected, you're given a little message that things will be completed and uploaded and then made visible for other people's use. And Noelle, I'm sorry, I just saw your point. Can you leave that area blank? Which one? Jurisdiction? Jurisdiction standards. Yes. Oh, yes, you can. You can. I mean, it's just really more about what is it that you're doing here. I can take all of this out. I can just select standard, and then next step, submit. Yeah. So it's just how you plan, and you can always you may have seen as I've been going along that it has been saving. You'll see that little message. And if I'm worried that it hasn't, I can always click the save button, and that little green box pops up here. If you want to see what it looks like so far, you can click on your preview button, and it tells me that it was included with open author, and I see my introduction. And remember, there's nothing in my introduction, right? Write a nice introduction. And then my table of contents, I can go back to Alaska folklore, and I see my 2 sub areas, which was Southeast Alaska. And then after that, I would have the elusive Kushtaka, which I think I didn't write much other than put that video in there, right? So now this is something then after it's published, you can send your learners to this so they can go through the materials, etc. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to use, and it's really great for teachers that are the planners. They get all their materials together. They know exactly what they want to say and how to say it, and then move forward from there. Okay? All right. I need to move on. So I believe the next section here was going out to the CK12. Has anybody in the group ever seen or used CK12? No, not yet. Okay. All right, this is a new one for you. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go through just one little exercise of using CK12 Flex books. And these are textbooks that have been written and openly licensed. And what's nice is that you can go through and you can change them. You can change them up. So we're going to go over to the site. So we're going to log in. Okay, so I want you to go to CK12. And then we're going to go in. Let me go back one more so you can see it. CK12. And then I want you to choose Browse All Subjects. It's that little Browse button. It's a little like red light bulb. And then choose English. So let me go over to CK12. So when you log in, you should end up on what's called your dashboard. Your dashboard may have nothing on it right now. But way at the top here, next to the CK12 logo, you'll see Dashboard and then Classes Library. I want you to click on Browse. And then from Browse, now you only get your subjects. So however you filled out your profile is which subjects are shown. And there's none of these that I want right now. So I'm going to click on Show All Subjects. And I'm going to come over here to English and choose Writing. This is what I want you to do. So we went to Browse, opened up All Subjects, and then choose Writing. And from here we have 3 textbooks, flexbooks. Common Sense Composition, Journalism 101, and the Glyphata method, which I have no idea what that is. But I'm going to choose the Common Sense Composition. Now, when you're on this page, you're looking at this textbook, and you have 3 tabs at the top: Read, Resources, and Details. And on the far left, you'll see where it says Add to Library, Share with Classes, Add to Flexbook, Textbook, or Customize. So, of course, you as a teacher, you would be doing much more due diligence, and you would be reading about, okay, what is this composition book all about? This is probably something you can, if you really wanted to see more about it, you can look under Details, and you can see that it was when it was created, what it aligns to for grades 9 through 12. So this might be a good book for your ASE classes to provide a generalized understanding of composition. It's very basic, tells you who the author is, where they're from, what tags they assign to it, and if there were standards correlations listed here. Now this was done in 2012, and it was modified in 2015. So now if I go back to read, I can look at these table of contents by clicking on the titles and then the sub areas and looking at the learning objectives. Here's the introduction, words associated with each of the 5 senses, examples. I'm sorry for all the scrolling, but you get the idea. This is a full-on textbook. Now these little buttons up here allow you to highlight text and add any notes. So for some teachers, they do that like, oh, I don't really agree with that statement, or, oh, I need to add something about this. I don't think this is really clear. It's up to you how you want to look at this material. But most teachers want to go through and read the information on each of these class books, textbooks. So if I come back here to my previous page, I'm just going to hit my back button here. I thought they had a navigation on here before. So go back to read. No, go back one more. So I'm back to my table of contents. I want to get back here because I want to go over these buttons on the left. I don't want to add it to my library right now. I'm going to choose on Customize because I want to be able to change some things around. So it tells me here they've got some great new enhancements. They've got autosave. We all love autosave, right? And they also allow you to save things as drafts. And then when you only finalize it when you're done. So that's fine. They're just giving me a warning of what this is. So here's the table of contents again. And again, you've got a list of resources that can be uploaded to go with the file, or if there was other files listed here. Sometimes teachers would add videos, etc. And again, here's your details. You can change this here because this allows you to edit it, right? Tells you if you wanted to add any more subjects or if you add additional tags. But under the Edit tab, you may decide that you don't want to talk about descriptive essays at all, or narratives, any one of these. I can just click this X here and it will remove that entire section. If you would prefer to move things around, I don't want to start with a descriptive essay. I want to start with a persuasive essay. So I can click and hold this double-headed arrow again and drag this up into the order that I want. And Flexbooks automatically realigns and renames, renumbers your chapters. So you could come in here and you could essentially break this up into 4 pieces. Maybe you want to do all of the explanations of the different types of essays. Maybe you want to break up the writing about literature and tone and style and business documents into another section, and then the parts of speech, the parts of the sentence, punctuation, verbs and sentences, structures, common errors could be a third. So you could break this out. You could delete all these and put them into another textbook. So you can just edit as you see fit. So if I wanted something a little different here on my descriptive essays, I have my title. I could give it another name here in this box. I could change the description. I could go to the introduction section and I could type more of an introduction that you wanted. If I wanted a summary, if I wanted to add resources, I could upload files. And again, under details, this is who did this originally. And if you wanted to add your name because you were adding more information or you were editing the chapter, you could do that. So again, I'm going to go back here. I didn't change anything, so I'm not going to click on Save the Chapter, but you do get the idea of how you can make major changes to the textbook and write it the way you want. So if I look farther in here under my persuasive essay, and I try to, oh, come on, I think I missed. So again, I get my little message here. I get my descriptive. I can edit my title, but I'm not editing all of the content like I could on that previous one. So that was more about the titles, etc. So here I can look inside and I'm going to edit my learning objectives. Maybe I'm going to take some things out, change my introduction. But all of this, remember you saw this before when you were looking at the table of contents. Well, I can edit this. I can change it. So it may be that you are working maybe with high English language learners, but this text may be a little tough. So you want to go through and maybe just highlight words that they may not understand. Okay? And again, I like that CK12, they're still linking you to the resources if you want to update files, add additional details to this particular section. And it always says draft up here because you haven't finalized it yet, right? So I'm going to go back to my edit side. And on the left, my buttons have changed. I have keep as draft, finalize draft, or discard draft. So if you were working on this and you knew you'd have to come back and make some changes, you would, of course, keep as draft. All right? So I'm going to, all I did was opening up chapter 1, descriptive essays, and I can edit that text if I want to. So as you go through and you look at these textbooks, just remember a Flexbook in CK12 is completely editable by you. So you can choose to make changes, add more resources, maybe add some multimedia, and then you can then save that as a finalized draft and then share that with your learners. Okay? Any questions so far? I'm going to come back to the chat pod here. Okay, you guys, I must all be busy, which is good. So CK12 is always working to help teachers, and I noticed this just today, this add to CK12, there's this button that you can add to your browser by just dragging this button to your browser toolbar. And so it's a nice way to be able to take resources that you find online. If I click on this little question mark, It'll take me to a page that tells me, how this bookmarklet, that's what they call it. It's just a way for you to add resources and come back to your library and find materials that you've added from the web. So for me, if I were to add that, maybe I'd want to add, some of my resources I found on, Alaska Myths and Legends, except I'm not working on Myths and Legends in CK12. I went back to my dashboard, and as you start working in CK12, not only can you create classes, so here's an idea of I creating a class, it's my test group, and I can add students to my class by clicking this little button. I can invite them by email, I can add students without email, or I can upload a class roster. And what that does, it makes it easy for you to assign textbooks, activities, or resources to your class. So I can get reports from them, and if there's any question and answers, you can turn it on or off. And if you have any other shared resources that you want to share in your class. So my dashboard, again, is just the landing page. And then my library is where I have saved materials. So here's that common sense composition. Here's the descriptive essays that I pulled out separately. And I never finished it, but so I may want to come along later and decide whether do I want to archive it. And over on this side where my little checkbox is, I can manage it, put it in a different folder if I want. Archiving is similar to deleting. It's never really gone, but it's there. So under browse you've been to before, and it is a nice way to be able to browse by subjects that you have chosen. But if you want to browse other subjects, you can click on Show My Subjects, and then maybe go into history or something and look at what's available as a textbook there. We're only focusing on textbooks, okay? CK12 has a lot of other resources available that we haven't even touched, but that's because we're running out of time, okay? So I highly encourage you to come in and experiment. On the resource slide deck that I'll give you here, there is a CK12 YouTube channel. And there's a great webinars playlist here that I won't play it, but you have a whole series of webinars that they've done on. Here's one on the Flexbooks themselves. Here's one, Everything CK12, Advanced Flexbook Editing, Everything CK12 again, Groups and Practices, Simulations, which we never got to, Plix Interactives, we never got to. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in trying to adopt a Flex textbook for your agency or for your school program, at least go through this series of videos, because it'll give you a whole lot more information than we've been able to cover in a mere 30 minutes or so. The other items that are here is a user guide for educators and parents. So it really gives you an idea of, what are the different items that are available in terms of Flexbooks, groups, assessments, and a bunch of helpful links about, using CK12. And it is a really comprehensive system of materials. I think the biggest obstacle sometimes for adult educators is that when our materials are focused so keenly on K-12, it does require us to do some modification. Well, what's nice about CK12 Flexbooks is that modification is very simple to do. Very simple to do. And it's a way for teachers to be able to take materials that somebody else has created, aligned to standards, etc., and have a good starting resource to help their learners in whatever their learning goals are. Okay, now the chat box has been very quiet. So are there any questions? We've already done this. I think I lost everybody. Nobody's talking. Thank you, Jean. So I'd like you to think about maybe how you might incorporate using either of these two resources? That's kind of my last slide. This one here is a resource slide, and these are just resources about kind of the open education movement. We've got the Open Education Handbook, and there's myth busting. That is kind of really nice because a lot of folks have a misconception about OER as being low quality or no quality, etc. So there's also the Open Educational Resources Resource Roundup. It's kind of hard to say. And that just provides you with a huge list of other resources about OER. So we finished up with Open Author, which is an authoring tool out of OER Commons. Just remember within OER Commons, which I did not show you, let me see if I can get back to it quickly without losing my place here. OER Commons does have a very large open adult ed. Let me go back to it real quick here. At the top here under groups, you see this first one here is my group, but it's also a featured group, this Adult Education Open Community of Resources. Adult educators on OER Commons are very active, and this is a group that has gone out and looked at open educational resources and actually used them in their classrooms, and then rated them or reviewed them as to how effective they were and made suggestions. So if anything on OER Commons, go up to the top there where it says groups and find Adult Education Open Community of Resources and look at their shared resources that they have found. Okay, that's for OER Commons. That's completely separate from the authoring tool. And then the last one I'd like to ask you about is if you go into CK12, I'd really like to hear your experiences if you have the time to tell me about, did you try a Flexbook or did you end up exploring other resources that we didn't look at and use those instead, which is perfectly fine. The idea is to get you to understand the value and the incorporation of OER in your classroom. Yes, and you've got the Adult ESL group is also very active. Yes, Deborah, I'm glad you think so. The possibilities are truly endless. The biggest thing I think is, I try to tell folks that, especially if you use textbooks and you have that process coming up about reviewing textbooks, that maybe suggest to your administration that, well, there's a way we might be able to save money by not having to purchase textbooks, but we want you to spend that money in helping us teachers create a viable, applicable textbook for our learners, because then you're the authors, you're invested in it, and you get paid what would normally go to a vendor for a textbook to teachers to develop the materials for the learners as well. No, Noella, they wouldn't require learners to have an account. For like CK12, I'm going to back up from that because you remember you could add them to a classroom, but I do not believe they have to have an account. They just have to have the code for your class. But I'm not positive about that. The second, in OER Commons, once your resource is published, anybody can access it without an account. That's again because of that open educational resource realm of the 5 R's. So Deborah, I'm glad you got something out of it. And I think that I'll go ahead and wrap it up and turn things back over to Veronica. And the last thing I'll show you here is that I, too, license my materials under Creative Commons. So when you get a copy of this, you are free to use it. It's pretty small. It's only 12 slides. But we try to practice what we preach here at OTAN. So thank you all, and I'll turn it back over to Veronica.
Thank you so much, Penny, and thank you to everyone for participating in today's webinar. The webinar recording and Penny's PowerPoint presentation will be available on the AUBG website. I will also email it to everyone so that you'll have a copy of that. In addition, when I close the room at this time, an evaluation will appear on your screen. Please be sure to take a minute or two to complete the evaluation. It's our way of communicating feedback to Penny regarding this webinar. In addition, we address your professional development and technical assistance needs. So thank you everyone for participating, and I hope everyone has a great weekend. Goodbye.